Welcome back, my ghoulish darlings, to another episode of the Eldritch Hour. I'm your host, Lilith Fury, the Eldritch Queen of Horror, and tonight we're diving into the uncanny and unsettling world of doppelgangers, changelings, and beings that can copy the appearances of people. These entities, whether from myth, folklore, or modern horror, tap into a primal fear, the loss of our identity. From paranormal legends to psychological theories, from famous historical cases to pop culture interpretations, tonight we'll uncover the layers of mystery and terror surrounding these shape-shifting beings. And of course, I'll leave room for my own eerie encounter with the phenomenon. The word doppelganger comes from German, meaning double walker. In folklore, seeing your doppelganger is considered an ill omen, often predicting death or tragedy. Doppelgangers are thought to be a physical double of a living person without their soul, and they often act malevolently, causing chaos or mischief in their victim's life. One of the most famous doppelganger stories involves Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. The celebrated German writer, Goethe claimed to have seen his own double riding toward him on horseback, dressed in unfamiliar clothes. Years later, Goethe found himself wearing those exact clothes, fulfilling the eerie vision. In more recent times, there are reports of doppelgangers appearing to loved ones, co-workers, or even the person themselves. Abraham Lincoln allegedly saw his double in a mirror shortly after being elected president. The second reflection appeared pale and ghostly. Mary Todd Lincoln took it as an omen of his impending death, a prediction that sadly came true. In European folklore, changelings are said to be fairies or demon children left in places of a human child. The changeling would mimic the appearance of the stolen child, but their behavior often gave them away. They might display unusual intelligence, consume enormous amounts of food, or show disdain for holy objects. The fear of changelings was so pervasive that it led to tragic outcomes. One infamous case is that of Bridget Cleary, an Irish woman who was murdered by her husband in 1895 because he believed that she had been replaced by a changeling. The case shocked the public and highlighted how deeply rooted such beliefs were in rural communities. Psychologists suggest that the changeling myth might have been an early way to explain developmental disorders, such as autism or cerebral palsy, that were not understood at the time. The idea that a child could be replaced likely stemmed from the sudden and dramatic changes in behavior or health that sometimes parents observed. Psychologists have studied the doppelganger phenomenon in depth. Some researchers believe it could be linked to Capgras delusion, a rare condition where a person believes that someone close to them has been replaced by an identical imposter. This delusion is often associated with brain injuries, dementia, or schizophrenia. On a broader level, the fear of doppelgangers ties to existential concerns about identity and selfhood. Seeing one's double could trigger a confrontation with mortality or the unsettling notion that we are not unique. Jungian psychologists might even interpret doppelgangers as representations of the shadow self, the darker, repressed parts of our personality that we refuse to acknowledge. From a paranormal perspective, some investigators believe doppelgangers might be astral projections, interdimensional beings, or even glitches in the fabric of reality. Theories abound, but no definitive explanation exists, which only deepens the mystery. Beyond doppelgangers, changelings, countless myths and legends describe creatures that can assume the appearance of others. In Norse mythology, for instance, it describes a spirit double that precedes a person, performing their actions before they arrive. In Japan, there is a ghostly entity that mimics human appearance but also has no face, adding an extra layer of terror. Pop culture has taken these ideas and run with them. Films like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Thing explore themes of paranoia and mistrust, while most recent entries like Jordan Peele's Us tackled the doppelganger as a representation of societal and personal guilt. Even sci-fi series like Star Trek and Doctor Who frequently feature shape-shifting or duplicating entities as metaphors for identity crisis. The fascination with such beings speaks to our innate fear of the uncanny, something that looks human but isn't quite right. Whether it's a face that mirrors ours or a loved one that's just acting slightly out of character, these creatures tap into a deep psychological unease. Throughout history, reports of doppelgangers and shapeshifters have surfaced worldwide. In 1845, Emily Sagui, a French teacher, reportedly had a doppelganger that appeared in front of her students while she was visibly elsewhere. The students claimed that they saw two of her simultaneously, an event that left them shaken and unable to explain what had happened. As if one teacher isn't bad enough. Another strange case is that of paranormal investigator Lorraine Warren, who claimed to have encountered a mimic of her husband, Ed Warren. The being supposedly appeared while Ed was away on another investigation, further solidifying the eerie and unsettling nature of this phenomena. Even in the modern era, sightings of doubles persist. Some paranormal experts suggest that these encounters might be caused by residual energy or entities attempting to manifest into our world. Others believe they're connected to time slips or alternate dimensions, where versions of ourselves exist but occasionally cross into our reality. My son has a double. The first time this happened, my son was 3 years old. My second oldest sister was staying in my apartment, watching TV in her room when he walked in. She asked him if he wanted to watch some cartoons, and she put something on for him. He didn't respond. He just sat there quietly at the end of her bed. Then, suddenly, she heard him laugh in the other room with me. Confused, she turned to look at the bedroom door, and the version of my son that she had been talking to disappeared. When she told me about it, I assumed that she was high and had imagined the whole thing. I was helping her get clean at the time. I figured that's going to happen. The second time, it was a friend visiting from the UK. He got up at night to use the restroom, and on his way, he saw my son's bedroom door wide open. The lights were on, and my son was sitting at his little table with another child. The next morning, he casually mentioned how weird it was, since it had been around 3 a.m. and he didn't think anyone else was visiting. I told him that my son hadn't even been in his room that night. He slept in my bed, and that we definitely did not have any other children in the house. I brushed it off, assuming that my friend was just tired and jet lag, and he just imagined it. And then, a few years later, it happened again. This time, my son would have been around 8. My best friend at the time and roommate had gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and she saw what she thought was my son standing beside her in the dark hall. She told him to go back to his room. She then took a step into the bathroom where there was this giant mirror right in the front, and she could see that he had followed her, and he's standing directly behind her in the mirror. She turned around, told him to stop messing about and go back to bed. She then watched as he turned and left, but something felt wrong. She peeked over, checked the hallway, and he wasn't there. Panicking, she went to his room and found him fast asleep. The way that my son's room was set up, it was very difficult for the door to open and close because of the length of his bed and the size of the room. He would not have been able to have gone back to his room opened the door, got inside, laid down, and closed the door in time. She said that she took the fastest pee of her life that night. And then, years later, it happened again. This time I saw it. I had just had a miscarriage or stillbirth, and I was recuperating in bed from blood loss and both mental and bodily trauma. And I had fallen asleep. I woke up because I felt my son get into bed with me. He laid there beside me and he wrapped his arms around me. I gave him a hug and just started humming and singing him a lullaby. And that's when I realized something was wrong. The version of my son that was laying in bed with me would have been around 7 or 8 years old. My son was 15. So I looked at him and I asked him, "What are you?" And his reply was that everything was going to be okay. Then he just got up and walked away. When I told people about this, they assumed that I was just delirious from blood loss. But I felt otherwise. I think I had finally seen whatever it was that other people were seeing. Now, my son has never seen his copy, but countless other people have, including friends of his and other family members and roommates over the years. Whenever we see it, it doesn't cause a feeling of dread. There's no negative emotion or heaviness in the air. The only moment that anybody gets scared or feels uncomfortable is when they finally realize it isn't him. So whatever it is, we don't think it's bad, but we just don't know what it is. Doppelgängers, changelings, and mimics are more than eerie stories of horror tropes. They're reflections of our deepest fears about identity, loss, and reality itself. From psychological explanations to paranormal theories to ancient myths and modern movies, these beings continue to captivate us and terrify us and confuse us. But what do you think, my darlings? Are doppelgangers merely a psychological illusion, or could there be something more at play? Have you ever encountered a changeling or a mimic in your own life? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for joining me tonight on this unsettling journey. Until next time, sweet screams, and keep an eye on your reflection. You never know who might be staring back.